believe you remember.
Okay.
Good morning.
Okay. So, without further ado, try to see what we can arrange. Okay. Good morning.
I have a question.
Good morning.
Sometimes I don't think, but when I get home, I start to think.
That's a good sign. If you only think about it during the class, then you forget about it when you get home. This is a lot better.
This is when I start, digesting everything. No, it's a very simple question. What's the difference between honor and respect?
Those are English words. Do you have two Hebrew words that you can?
Good. People just makes believe in that.
Honor and respect. They're English words. It's hard to know. English is not Lashon HaKodesh.
Oh, really?
When my uncle was young, he was once in his shul in whatever summer, and he was talking to a friend in English, and an adult, said, "Why can you speak a language like that in the shul?" And the guy went and started talking to his friend in Hungarian. It's what you're used to. That's what's holy.
No, really, what's the difference?
The honor and respect.
But when you say in בעשר הדיברות, כבד את אביך ואת אמך, honor or respect, or maybe.
So now we have a definition. The halacha, we have a definition. It says actually two things. Kabed es avicha es emech, honor your father and mother. It also says tiro, ish imo v'ahav tiro. You should fear or revere your father and mother. And Chazal tells us what is what. So honor, l'chabed, means to give them food and drink, to help them get dressed, and to help them put on their shoes, and to help them come and go, and take them places. And fear, mora, is don't sit in their seat, don't stand in their special place. They're talking, don't talk before them, don't walk in front of them. So those are two concepts. So one is more like in the positive, to help them with things, that's kavod, and the other one is fear is more, I guess what we would call more respect. Not to do something that would to elevate them, to show that they're above me. So I don't. So it says, "Imo v'aviv tiro," right? Your mother and your father you should fear, because Hashem knows that naturally it's easier to fear the father. So it says, "Imo v'aviv," even the mother you should fear. And it says, "Kabed et amicha v'emecha." It says because naturally it's easier to honor the mother because she's the mother. So even the father you have to honor and help. So it's hard to do both for both.
Thank you.
Okay. Good. So let's see if we, no pun intended, if we can wrap this up, just to kind of get to the end of our discussion. That means never the end, but we can always continue it if there's a need. But I figure we could just read through to the end of the discussion about packages on Shabbos. So when you have a bag or a wrapper or something thin and doesn't really have much of a shape, doesn't really have much substance, so you can tear it open on Shabbos in any way in order to get to the food or get to the clothing. It's something that you're going to use and that you're going to need. That will, that you'll actually benefit from in a physical, real way on Shabbos. So it's like peeling an apple or peeling an orange. That's because these bags, they're just bags. They don't really have any use. So you're not making a container because no one saves a bag of potato chips, but you can't do anything with it. No one saves a candy wrapper. These kinds of things don't have any lasting benefit to them. So therefore, you can open them any way. You can open them the way they're supposed to be opened. You can open them not the way they're supposed to be opened. One thing that you should avoid is you shouldn't tear and destroy writing or pictures. He says there is actually a preference if you could destroy them in a way that is destructive. In other words, if you can open the potato chip bag and tear it all down the side, it's better than if you open it just at the top. Even if opening it just at the top is okay because nobody really thinks that this bag is going to be used for anything. But if you could tear it all the way down, that's even better because then you certainly aren't left with nothing. Now, boxes or bags that are thicker and have real, substance to them, heavy paper packaging, could be reusable. And if you open them in a proper way, right, so some things, for example, we talked about those bags that actually have a Ziploc at the top, and you're supposed to, a bag of pistachio nuts, you can have it for 6 months. Or a box of cereal, you open the box at the top and it even has little flaps to close it. Those things are designed to last. And even if they're not designed to last, they could last. So a bag of sugar, you can open up a bag of sugar, it's just paper. You can pour it into a container with a lid, which a lot of times people do. But sometimes you don't. You open up a bag of sugar and you just roll the top closed. Bag of potatoes, right? You can dump them into a bin, a plastic basket if you have one, but you don't have to. So in that case, opening it properly could be really a problem because then you're creating a container that you can use. Therefore, the way to open those things is by tearing them completely. You have to make sure that you open it so that you're left with nothing. So, for example, there's a box of cookies, a box of cereal, a box of matzah. So he says,
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
About opening up citrusy fruit or fruits and using the peeling for artwork later on. I didn't think about that.
Well, okay. The fact that you may want to save the peel, I don't think it prevents. If you are actually peeling the fruit to eat it, and you're just making the decision that you're not going to throw away the peel, I don't think that makes it any more problematic. Again, assuming that the real reason that you're peeling it is just to eat it, and you're not actually doing anything special with the peel, you're just peeling it off the way you would any other fruit. Obviously, if you're peeling it off in a decorative fashion, so there might be more of an issue there. But
no,
if
not
you're doing whatever, if you're peeling the fruit the same way everyone else peels it, and eating it the way everyone else eats it, and you just instead of throwing the peels in the garbage, you just the peels could be considered muktzah, although in many cases, apple peels are edible, so they're not muktzah. Even orange peels, I think, are also edible. They're not muktzah either. I believe. But even if they are muktzah, so you let them fall on the floor and you collect them after Shabbos, I don't think that there would be a problem.
Okay, so I can let them fall on the floor and just collect them.
Yeah, then collect them later. Right.
Okay. Okay, or can I cover it or something so the bugs don't get
put something on top of it. Putting something over it is not a problem. You're not handling it. You're just covering it with something.
Okay.
If you're best thing to do with a banana peel is to peel it into the garbage. If you are peeling fruit, that's a separate issue of muktzah. If you're peeling fruits or nuts, not like pistachio nuts are obvious example where you're left. If you eat pistachios, you're left with a pile of shells. That is a problem. But if there's something on the plate. So if there is something else on the plate, like you have a fork on the plate, and then you take up an empty plate, put a fork on the plate, and then you put the nut shells on the plate. That plate is now a container for both the fork and the pistachio nut shells. The fork is obviously more valuable to you than the shells, and if your purpose is now to pick up the plate and to get rid of the shells, so you just carry it to the garbage and tilt the plate so the shells fall into the garbage. That's the preferred way to deal with that issue.
I was putting it in the refrigerator. I was putting the peels inside the refrigerator.
The banana peels?
No, like the orange peels and the lemon peels.
If they're edible, then you could do that. Yeah. They're edible. They're not
but not using it. But not using it to eat it. Using it later on, but not killing it in no special way.
You have something that's really edible, and you decide. Let's say I have water, right? And after Shabbos, I want to make some watercolor painting. But it's just water. I mean, the water is not muktzah just because I want to use the water for watercolor painting. Yeah, I guess the question to me would be, there might be, I don't know this for a fact, but sometimes there are things that are borderline. Like, they may or may not be considered food. Just like we said, they may or may not be considered containers. In those cases, sometimes intention matters. So if you have something that many people throw away, and some people use it, some people use it for food, and some people use it for other purposes, and you are saving it not to use for food, for another purpose, there may be a question there. So I don't know. I think an apple peel is clearly edible and clearly food. I don't see.
Because it has a name called zest.
Zest, right. Some things that are clearly edible and clearly food. I don't see, how there could be an issue. And there are things, let's say bones, right? So bones, they say, well, they could be, animals can eat them, and it depends if there are animals in your city where you live. Something like that. If you were going to use the bones for something else, for some kind of science experiment and not for food, so I don't know, maybe that would be an issue because you're designating them for another purpose. But in most cases, anything that is edible is food. That's the primary use of all these things. So I don't think there'll be much of a problem there.
But moving forward, I said, now, is it okay? But now that I know this, I'm aware of moving forward, if I would avoid peeling it now altogether or peel it prior to Shabbos.
Okay, yeah, listen, it's always, even when something is fine, the idea of safeguards is an appropriate one when the safeguards are reasonable and not onerous. The idea that, many of the laws of Shabbos themselves are really safeguards. As we saw, many things are not forbidden according to Torah law, but according to rabbinic law. And the goal is that the Torah itself tells us to do this, is to do things, to create a guardrail so that we stay 2 steps or 3 steps away from the actual violation. So if you have doing something before Shabbos that you don't have any questions, you don't have to mentally say, well, when it happens, I'll run through the checklist in my head and I'll decide what to do. Even if it's totally fine, but anything which, once you have to start running through a mental checklist on Shabbos, so that tells you something already, that you're doing an activity. Or sometimes it's unavoidable. We're also not supposed to go overboard with safeguards, but that's why they say certain things like making sure all your food is fully cooked before Shabbos, or making sure all your food packages are open before Shabbos. Although we have a whole list of things that you could do, but once you start getting into it, you could do this and you could do that, but you can't do that, and it's easy to make a mistake. So it's certainly a good and praiseworthy thing to create guidelines like that. Keep it simple and keep it, completely detached from any possibility. And that's a mitzvah in and of itself to do that. And one additional, aside from everything else, when we do things like that, we fulfill the mitzvah of remembering Shabbos. Right? So Chol Shabbos applies all week long. I heard once from a rabbi that even when we say Shacharis every morning, at the end of Shacharis, he says people sometimes are in a rush. The men want to leave the shul, they came to the minyan, then they have to go to work, and then the very last thing we say is the Shir Shel Yom. The Shir Shel Yom is the daily chapter of Tehillim that was read by the Leviim when it was the Beit HaMikdash, and we say Hayom Yom Rishon L'Shem. Today is the first day of Shabbos, the first day of the week, and this is what they used to say on this day. And again, it's just a chapter of Tehillim to commemorate the song of the Leviim, but when every time you say that, you're basically saying that the week revolves around. It's not Sunday. Today is Yom Rishon Shabbat. So you're fulfilling a mitzvah, potentially a biblical mitzvah of remembering the Shabbos. But all kinds of other things. You're going shopping. You say, oh, this looks really nice. Why don't I buy it now? I could use some on Shabbos. You're fulfilling a mitzvah. And anytime you say, I'm going to do this now because it's better I do it before Shabbos, so you're honoring Shabbos even before Shabbos starts. So it's an opportunity and it's a privilege to be able to do all kinds of things, not just on the day, but around, before, after, things that bring Shabbos into the week. Okay, so boxes. Right, there are a box of cookies, a box of cereal, a box of matzah. So first of all, you're not supposed to open the flaps that are stuck together because that's something talked about in terms of korea, like tearing, sewing, cutting the stitches, gluing, ungluing. That's the problem. What if you need to get to the food? So then, first of all, you have to do it. So you don't do it along the flaps. You cut it open or tear it open. Or we said you can use the scissors if you need to, but tear it open, and tear open in a destructive way. So, for example, here you don't have to, take a paper shredder, but you could take a box of cereal, tear the bottom, and then tear the top. That way, it's open at both ends. Not really good for anything. So, instead of ungluing the flaps, make a tear, make one tear on bottom, one tear on top, and then it's just a hollow tube. Tissue boxes, also additional issue with tissue boxes is they tend to have like a little perforated line, and they make a nice. It's also a problem because you're creating the shape doesn't have any meaning, but it's meant to be make a nice opening that looks attractive and is convenient. That's also a problem. Making an intentional cut.
You open it before Shabbat.
You open it exactly. You open it before Shabbat, and then
so you can't open it.
Right. Again, if you need tissues, you take the box and decimate it, and then and then you're okay. Right.
No, I tear open like 3 or 4 boxes of tissues.
Yeah, that's right. That we have like also with that the wet the wipes.
Right.
We take them from the store before you go on the shelf. They all get open and then resealed, and then I don't even think about it. If it's on the shelf, we know somebody opened it before Shabbat. Oh, did anybody open these? Yeah. If it didn't go on the shelf unless it was open. You do the same with tissue wrappers, really, but that would be a good habit to get into. Okay. Okay. Cutting open. The spout of a plastic bottle of oil or soap. I'm not sure exactly what he's describing, but the point is you're creating an opening that will be usable. Like milk containers, juice cartons, those kinds of things. Spouts that are meant to be used for pouring, and you create that opening in the spout. That's also a problem. So, we talked about opening the caps of bottles, which is questionable because some say that the cap itself is being created. Forget the bottle. The cap is now created as a usable entity.
Something like this, Rabbi, isn't it always a usable entity? It's just attached with a safety seal.
Right. So, let's get through an order. We're going to get to it. I'm jumping ahead, so we'll get to that more shortly.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. What was this?
I just started jumping ahead. We started talking about bottle caps, but that's actually a page or two down the road. Let's just get to it in order. The milk cartons with spouts, right? Any of us who are old, we know about this. They used to make milk cartons which have paper spouts. So that could be korea, ungluing the glued thing, and it's constructive. And makim patish, right? Completing an entity. You're making this into and the spout has a purpose. It's not just tearing open the container, but it's actually creating a functional design with a clever little spout design. Some people say it's actually not a problem, interestingly, because the gluing in these cases, the argument in all these cases is it's never glued to be permanent. It's glued only until the customer takes it home, and the sooner the customer takes it home, the better, right? So it's not even intended to be permanent in any way. It's also not creating anything new, so not completing a new entity. It's just ungluing a pre-existing opening. But this is a leniency and what should be avoided. So again, do it before Shabbos if you can. If you can't, best thing is make it all destructive. So again, the simple way to do it, and with milk cartons, it's not hard. Take a pointy thing, a knife or whatever, make a hole in the bottom, and then open the top. Make sure you have a bowl to catch everything while you're doing this. What about, let's say, juice?
Does it have to be on the bottom?
I guess if you made it like on the side, the point is you don't want to be left with anything usable. If you had a milk carton and there was 2 inches up from the bottom, there was a hole that would probably also constitute. Certainly, the spout would be pretty useless because nothing would be able to be contained higher than the bottom. Even the bottom, I don't know if we would consider it useful because if you were really saving the milk carton for you wouldn't want to have a hole, so close to the bottom. That might help as far as spout. In other words, the spout is no longer useful because there's another hole. So that could be. I don't know if it would solve the problem of the carton overall, because you could still keep it in your fridge. And you probably would if you had a milk carton, and while you were opening the spout, let's say it was on Tuesday, and while you were opening the spout, it didn't open well, it got torn. You still keep it in your fridge. You just put a plastic bag over it, and you'd still use it for a week or so until you just be careful when you pour the milk. So I suspect that doesn't solve the problem overall of. I think so.
So if you're putting a hole in the bottom, you're going to pour the milk into another container.
Right. Here's the bottom of the carton, maybe punctured, rendering it useless, allowing the contents to drain out into another container. Right. What about those small juice boxes, right? They have a little straw. So you would think putting the straw in the hole is a problem, but it's not. Why? The containers are disposable. Nobody keeps them around for anything. You're not making an opening because you just need a place to put the straw in. I mean, even if it was a plastic cup, it doesn't help you in any way to have the opening is not particularly shaped. It's just meant to hold the straw. And what you're doing when you put the straw in is you're tearing a little piece of foil, which is not really part of the box is fully formed, and the hole is really already there. They just put a little thing to block the opening, and you're unblocking it. It's like a wrapper. Okay. When possible, you should open it before Shabbos. Okay, but it's fine. It's like a refrain. It's like on Shabbos we sing the beginning. Okay, plastic milk bottles. These are the ones with the skirt, like the band around the bottom of the cap, and you tear it in a circle around, milk bottles. These are out of style already, but so Korea. One issue is tearing that plastic band as a form of Korea, and again creating a fully functional item. So he has a helpful suggestion for how you could take the cap off without tearing. If you grab it and sort of slip it off, you can bypass the whole tearing thing. And then you can also put whatever you want in the milk and then put it back in the shelf in the supermarket and wait for the unsuspecting customer to buy it. But it says you can even use a nutcracker or even a pliers, as we discussed, right? You can use the pliers to get the cap off. He says if you do it carefully, you can actually take the cap off without tearing the ring. Not actually so hard.
I use a rubber band. I didn't know you could use pliers or. Wow.
Well, if you don't have, again, the same thing as we spoke about, like using the hammer or the scissors. If you don't have anything, if you don't have a nutcracker. Okay.
I'll show.
We'll have a demonstration.
Correct, but this is also to unscrew it. You're using. Sometimes things are screwed on very hard.
Right.
Yes, okay. But so
he's talking about avoiding you don't want to tear the ring.
I remember saying you just like to yank it up.
To yank it up without unscrewing is not the problem. These are the ones where you have a tab and you tear in a circle. You tear the ring off the bottom of the cap. And to avoid that need to tear the ring, you can actually lift. You can actually stick like a little knife under and pry it off. Milk bottles. No, milk bottles.
This is like the old-fashioned milk cartons. They used to have a tab that you would pull it all the way around.
Yeah.
And then
So tearing that's part of the cap, and by tearing it, you're creating the cap in its current state. No, not the pliers. If you needed to. Yeah. Well, if there's no issue with the ring, if the issue is just that it's stuck on too tightly. You can certainly use pliers, yeah, of course. Because that's really anything. And the only issue with the pliers looks funny. The pliers is not. anything else suitable. If it was equally possible to use a pliers, then you should choose a rubber band. But if it's not equally possible, then you can use the pliers.
What?
Well, let's say that you have a bottle of soda and someone didn't want the fizz to go out. So they closed it, they took one cup and closed it very, very tightly. Now you can't open it again.
Right.
So you can use the pliers to open it.
Well, you can't use it to open it.
Which is not addressing the issue of tearing the plastic ring. I'm picking a case where it was open before Shabbos.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought.
Okay.
So now with this tearing the foil or something.
Not foil. This is a part of the cap, but the cap comes with a plastic ring around the bottom of it, and the only way to get the cap off the bottle seemingly is to tear that plastic ring with a tab. The foil over the wine bottle is nothing. It's a wrapper. It has no substance. It has no permanent.
That little thing and
Oh, the twisty thing?
No. There's a little.
Oh, the little tab, yeah. The tab is just there to grip the foil. It doesn't do anything. Yeah, you're not tearing in any kind of designed way. It's not creating any kind of functional item. It isn't doing anything.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so now what are we talking about?
Okay.
Like pictures.
Yeah, well, I have pictures. I probably you just don't see them. Now, okay, so we talked about plastic caps with the pull tabs, right?
Right.
Okay, metal cans. It's not correct, right? Tearing, you don't tear metal. It is a hard, non-pliable material. But there are serious shilas of creating a usable item. There's still a firm basis to be lenient. Again, these are disposable. Nobody really saves them, and some people are lenient. However, many people do take a stricter view, and you should open all your cans before Shabbos. There are permissible ways. Basically, the permissible way is open the bottom and the top of the can. A can opener does kind of work on the bottom of a can. Not so much. The bottom is more rounded and doesn't quite lend itself, but you can usually at least get it, or get a hole in it and make it not usable. Okay, twist off bottle caps. That's what we keep on waiting for. So twist off bottle caps are the ones that we mostly encounter. They're plastic. When you twist them, it breaks a ring, and the ring stays in the bottle, and the cap comes off. So, if they're metal, that's much more problematic. Many people say that that's forbidden because the cap becomes a functional item, and you should open those before Shabbos. If you haven't done it before Shabbos, the easiest way to resolve it is make a hole in the cap, get a knife or corkscrew, anything, and make a puncture. Once it's a puncture, the cap doesn't do anything. It won't serve as a good seal. I mean, you may still use it because it's better than leaving the bottle open completely, or we'll take a plastic bag, put it over the mouth of the bottle, and screw the cap down over the plastic bag, which kind of works. But the cap,
metal.
right? But the twisting open the ruined cap, so you'll still break the ring, but who cares at that point? The cap isn't worth anything. Other people say if you open it up and then throw it away, even if you open it up normally, but you immediately throw it away, so you don't actually need the cap. So that is also okay. It's the first way is actually better. It's better because you'll still have the cap and you might want to use it. It's also better halachically speaking than the second way. The second way is also acceptable. If you have the option, if you have a small single serve, or you're having a kiddush and you have a bottle that will be drunk entirely, so just open it up, throw away the cap, and then immediately, and then you're good to go. The plastic ones are not as much of a problem as the metal ones, even though they're both the same thing. You twist the cap and the ring breaks off. The reason is that the plastic caps, it depends. The difference is how they're made. The plastic ones are made in its actual shape and then put onto the bottle and kind of snapped on. So it really existed even before it was put onto the bottle. Now that it's on the bottle, there's no way to take it off without breaking the ring. But you can argue that you didn't really make anything new. You just kind of enabled it, detached it from the bottle. Whereas the metal ones, the way they're created, it's like I think my understanding is it's a sheet of metal and it's kind of molded right onto the bottle. So it was like born when you take it off. So it's more of a problem. Again, the same thing. Yeah, the easiest thing to do is just make a hole in the cap and then take it off or throw the cap out if you need to. Some people would just take these plastic caps off without any issues. I think Edelman followed the more lenient view. Yes, that's right. Flip top bottles are fine. All right, let's see. Okay, I think we've done justice. I mean, as much as one can ever do.
How do we clean up a mess? I'm a mess.
Well, that's the second half of this class, how we clean up a mess. As a matter of fact, that was the name of the class. Why did I call the class that? Because I always try to find a catchy title. And actually is a reference to that. I'm not sure if Rashi says it, but this parsha has the mysterious, the para aduma, the red heifer. The mysterious thing is, what is a heifer? Nobody knows. Nobody have actually used that word in conversation. There's like one used word that Rebecca says, viceroy. It's the only time that word has ever been used is to refer to Yosef. There's never been any other viceroys in history, and nobody knows what it means. But so it's a red cow. It refers to a cow of a certain age or a certain status.
It's a
female cow, right? It has to be and if you spoke Hebrew, it would be much easier. Speaking Hebrew is much better than English. You say para, and para, everyone knows. Like, well, how hard is that? There's para and there's para. No, you don't need to use any fancy words. The word heifer actually has the same letters as para, just scrambled. So that might be something in that. But para is a female cow. Like, that's easy. Female, that's it, right? Speaking Hebrew is much better. The Torah actually says three words: para aduma tamima, right? A cow that is red, completely red. So it means the red has to be complete. You can't have any other color on it. And Asher in Bamum, it can't be physically at any defects, which is true about every carbon. And any sacrificial animal has to be unblemished, and it never bore a yoke or did any kind of work in any way. What is the purpose of this red cow? So it would be slaughtered and burned, and kind of like a sacrifice, but different in some ways. But at the end of the day, when you finished all the procedures, you had ashes, and with those ashes, it would then be preserved and stored in different places. And what it was used for was that if somebody, and we spoke about this, I don't think the we spoke about it. If somebody became impure for purposes of this discussion, they went to a cemetery, they were at a funeral, touched a dead body, whatever it is, the only way to become pure again is through the ashes of the red heifer. And you mix some of the ashes with water, pour that water onto the person the third day and on the seventh day. That is the only way to remove the impurity. Now, there are other things like going to the mikveh, which work for other kinds of impurity. But for this kind of impurity, the impurity of death, this is the only way to remove it.